Can I welcome Graham Stringer, Member of Parliament for Labour Member of Parliament for Blackley and Middleton since 1997. Was Maurice here? And we should have Maurice Glasman, Lord Glasman, but don't see him. Anyway, we'll go ahead because we have got quite a short time. This is a section, I think, that is actually very, very important given what's happening in the country at the moment and what's happening in Parliament. And I'm very pleased as someone who was involved over many years on the Leaving the EU campaign to have Graham here, to see Kelvin Hopkins, who was one of the small number of Labour Leave people in Parliament. A little group of us, very small, but I think we had more effect probably than people thought we would, and certainly in the rallies that were done all around the country, both with Vote Leave and Leave EU, that working class Labour vote in northern areas was so crucial when it came to the actual vote. So today really was an opportunity to look at what's happening at the moment, Graham, within the Labour Party. I know it's a very, the title of Has Labour Betrayed Brexit? I think probably we know the answer, but I'm hoping that as you were a Manchester MP too, you might be able to throw a little light on what's happening with the Andy Burnham-Wes Streeting issue, and then we'll hopefully have time for a few questions. So Graham, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Kate. First of all, can I thank the Freedom Association for inviting me here today. It's great to listen to the last three speeches, which I did, which I agree with virtually every word. It's almost like a revival meeting. I don't go to my Labour Party meetings and often agree with every word that's said. So thank you for that. The other side of that equation was that those three speeches contained almost everything I wanted to say. So I will concentrate a bit on what's happening in the Labour Party. Partly to understand that, I saw Maurice yesterday and he said he was coming. Maurice and I did a debate at a Labour Party conference just before the referendum in 2016. Peter Kellner was on the other side of the debate, and he gave a standard Remainer argument. Rational, disagreed with it, but it was there. So I was very surprised when I did a radio debate with Peter after the referendum, when he was part, along with Keir Starmer and others, of the campaign to have a second referendum. His argument, which surprised me, I'd not heard it before, it was a strange argument. He said, well, of course we need a second referendum. Some of the people who voted in the last referendum are now dead. And of course, if you use that argument, then after general election, within 2 or 3 weeks, you could have another one. It's absolutely absurd, but it does reflect the way Brexit and the debate about autonomy confuses some of the people generally rational and on the left in this country. It comes out in many different ways. I'm going to go to two. One is a hostility to democracy, and it's not just about the European Union. When I ask my Labour colleagues, people who support staying in the European Union and some other international organisations that take away our sovereignty, I say, why do you want other people to make our laws? It's been the case since the Enlightenment that people who make our laws should be accountable to the people who pay the taxes. And why do you not any longer agree with that simple democratic statement, there is never an answer. I think the real answer to that is that the left generally in this country and in the United States, and for different reasons in Europe, don't like democracy very much. They have a rather arrogant attitude to it that technocrats, meaning them by and large, are more sensible and more rational and would be better off running the country than the people who they would like to vote for them. That's reached its focus in a way, and there are equivalents from the Labour Party in this country. But with Hillary Clinton's statement, when she called people who were thinking of voting for Trump, who had previously voted Democrat, she called them a basket of deplorables. And we have seen that from some people in the Labour Party who think showing a Union flag or a flag of St. George's means you're a fascist. It's an extraordinary view, but again, it comes back to the arrogance that those people think that basically they're better than the people who elect them to decide what should happen. I think, and it was said in one of the speeches, that this debate is wider than just the European Union. If you look at one of the key issues in the next general election, should have been in the last general election, about the people coming to this country without papers, having paid international criminals a great deal of money and are being allowed in, it's clearly an indication that we are not controlling our borders. And in one sense, we're not a country if we don't control our borders. And we have to have a debate about how we do that. And I think that that debate has to say we leave the ECHR, we leave the Refugee Convention, and we arrest people when they arrive. They're coming without papers. If I turned up without papers in any other country, I would not be allowed in. And it is only the ability to say we claim asylum when they've ripped up their papers that means that courts get involved in it. They look at the EHCR, and many of those people stay, having cheated and fiddled their way into the country. The same is true of the Refugee Convention and a number of other organisations. It'll be a bit difficult debate, but in a sense it takes it away from the debates we've had previously about the European Union, and it focuses on what I always thought was the real issue, which is about self-government and democracy and being a country. When the argument moves on after that particular argument to the economic analysis, I sort of dust off my pre-2016 speeches and point out that the only continent with a lower growth rate than Europe, the European Union, was Antarctica. And that there is no, we can't catch economic growth of a protectionist organisation which is failing very badly at the moment. I mean, John pointed out what the growth rate was like before we joined the European Union and what it was like when we joined, that effectively we got worse because the European Union really was set up to keep the Deutschmark as it was low so that they can trade more easily at a lower exchange rate than they should be, and to support French agriculture. That's the essence of it, and it's not really very good for us. So the economic argument is winnable. I think the democratic argument is winnable because people do believe that they should control the democracy. I was in my constituency the day of a referendum, very poor constituency, part of the constituency that has very low turnout, normally, And I bumped into a constituent who told me he didn't normally vote. He'd bothered to register, and he said, "Graham, this is about us making our own decisions, isn't it?" And it was. And that was, and those people who think people like that gentleman were deplorable are really attacking our own people. I will finish on the point, Kate. Now Maurice has arrived, on what's happening, on what's happening in the Labour Party. It will take a long time to go through it. But in essence, what Andy Burnham is saying, it's Tuesday today, so Andy is in favour of being in the European Union today. Yesterday he wasn't. Or is it the other way around? Basically what Andy, what the Prime Minister are doing is nothing to do with the electorate. The Labour Party membership is over 50% in London. And of that 50%, a large majority of them are Remainers. And the debate that's going on is not about the economic benefits of the country, about the democracy of the country. It is about which of those candidates, potential candidates, for the leadership of the Labour Party and to become Prime Minister of this country, they're appealing to the London Labour Party membership. And what is being avoided, and I hope the press, I hope the interrogation that party members carry out, the really serious issues that face this country, small boats, the lack of growth in the economy, energy prices, improvement in the delivery of services in the health service, one can go on. Those issues are being avoided and skated over, and it's my task and Maurice's task, as we were talking yesterday, is to try and focus the Labour Party not on just talking to the London membership, but on the real issues that face our country. Thank you once again for inviting me.
Maurice Glasman, who needs no introduction, has been a member of the House of Lords since 2011, and then afterwards we have time for a couple of 3 questions. Maurice.
Yeah, thank you. Always an honour to be anywhere near Graham Stringer. To me, he represents the Bevanite tradition in my party. There's not many of us left, but it's wonderful to be with you and to Kate. And to begin my remarks by saying that I don't divide the political space any longer between left and right. I divide it between sovereigntists and globalists. And if... Apologies, I'm in the Labour Party. When people applaud, I get very nervous. Not a common reaction, I find. And this concept of sovereignty is absolutely fundamental to Labour politics, is what I want to say. For the vast majority of our history, we were absolutely not a European social democratic rationalist party, not in the least. We were always monarchist. We never interfered with the constitutional inheritance of the ancient constitution. We just thought that there was something wrong with capitalism that turned human beings just into commodities. And we thought there was more to human life than that, and we did things like build the cooperative burial society so you didn't have a pauper's grave. We did things like assert, which was denied for over a century, the fundamental right of association so that workers could negotiate a genuine, decent settlement. And we absolutely supported national defence, civic order, family life, and all those things. So I just want to begin by saying that the Brexit referendum was, to me, the most significant moment in our politics. Certainly, I think it was more important than the election of Margaret Thatcher, but it's around that kind of range where nothing has been the same since. And they say, oh, the country's like, have you heard all this in the progressive? Oh, by the way, it's the last thing you want to hear when you go to the doctor, right? It's progressive. Bear that in mind, because it is a death sentence It is a palsy, what they call in medical terms. It means you can't think and you can't act, and this is where we are now. And I include in the term progressive the previous Conservative administrations. They were incapable of acting in order to secure national sovereignty. And once again, it causes me great anxiety when people applaud. You're absolutely not obliged. But this is and now we have a Labour government that is trapped in this progressive palsy. It cannot act. So along with sovereignty, talking from within Labour, we had a great faith in the working class of this country, and we absolutely supported democracy, that democracy was a fundamental, sacred aspect of our inheritance. And within that, we always upheld, I'm interested in this list because I've got some ticks and I've got some crosses, but within that, I prefer to talk about liberty and the inheritance of the ancient liberties, of which there were 4. Freedom of association, the liberty to associate with whoever you wish. The only constraint on this was the advocation of civic violence. That was completely out of order. But you could associate with whoever you wished. So we had freedom of association, freedom of expression. We had absolute faith that the people could recognize a charlatan from a sincere person, that they could distinguish between good arguments and bad. So, and then we had freedom of religion, that it was completely within our movement, we really did this. The Labour movement, to go back to the cooperative burial societies, it was the first time in English history that a person could be buried according to their faith in a multi-faith cemetery, that we broke in that way the Anglican stronghold on a decent burial. And then also we have a very particular concept of the dignity of labour, of the dignity of the human being, but that there is something noble and extremely fundamental about respecting skilled work, honesty, integrity, and those things. And we saw that there was a threat to that in just a system based on avarice, greed, and competition. So to clarify matters, let's go through the list. We would say individual freedom, absolutely, but that would be liberty. Family life is the absolute foundation of society and should be actively encouraged. Rule of law, yes, but not the rule of lawyers. This is absolutely fundamental. Once again, it's much too early for me to be praised. I'm still getting used to being awake. But this idea of the rule of lawyers is absolutely fundamental to the globalists. What they want are legal constraints on democratic freedom. That's the whole point, that there is a source of power outside our nation, outside of any change. It's in fact brilliantly, so when I talk about globalists, who do I include in that? I include in that Islamists. They don't care for any national authority, they want that. I include in that liberals. They don't want national, we found that out in the referendum, they don't want democratic sovereignty, they want absolute constraints on that. They don't really recognize the nation state as the ultimate source of authority. They want to take it further. So not only do they want us to be ruled by judges, they really want us to be ruled by foreign judges. This is their vision of peace. This is their, when they talk about values, understand that that's their fundamental value, is the erosion of democracy and the transfer of our liberty to a very curious universalist progressivism. That means that you actually, politics is relegated to a local government concern. So limited government, now I wanted to turn that into 2. No English or British government should interfere with our liberties. That's fundamental, so limited by common law, limited by custom, limited by tradition. We've got to restore our trust in all those things. However, it gets to the next one, I don't think it's possible to have a genuine national sovereignty without a sovereign industrial strategy. I think it's absolutely fundamental that we produce our own weapons. This is absolutely core to this. Remember my old friend Morgan McSweeney, he had his phone stolen. I don't know if you remember this occasion. He had his phone stolen. He assured me he had his phone stolen. I believe him. And the story was that he couldn't have any backup on his phone because all the backup was owned by American AI companies, essentially Google or Palantir. So our national interest required no backup on the phone, because otherwise America would be privy to state secrets. What a pathetic condition our country is in. So I don't think it's possible to have a genuine AI strategy based on national sovereignty, where I'm very much in favour of establishing a Royal College of Artificial Intelligence. I think it's absolutely vital that we have sovereignty over our weapons production, that our armed forces are capable of acting. I don't know, I was so ashamed when the lunatic, maniac Islamic Revolutionary Guard that rules Iran attacked our base on Cyprus and we didn't have a functional ship that could sail, right? So what I'm saying to you, and as we're here, Graham, as Labour people, where we have reservations about libertarianism and Thatcherism and this kind of conservatism, which isn't conservatism, it's a form of liberal, progressive, internet globalism, is that without a strong state backing for industrial strategy, a genuine partnership, we will be left with the monopolistic primes, the Babcocks, the BAEs. We will not be able to develop our own sovereign industrial strategy. So in this post-Brexit world that we now inhabit, the genuine difference between the sovereignties should be about the role of the state in industry. I think that we do need, that the free market economy is part of the problem that has led to where we are. Because ultimately, if you can afford it, why shouldn't you buy citizenship? Why shouldn't you pay people traffickers? Why shouldn't you accept prostitution? These are all natural market forces. But we say no to that there has to be a strong industrial-based state that is capable of restoring order. And this is the key thing about the Labour tradition and what it adds to our country, is that we have a genuinely positive idea of industry. I'm talking about large industry. I'm talking about the capacity to make tanks, helicopters, planes, to secure our borders. I said to Morgan that the first act of the Labour government should be to put the Royal Navy into the English Channel, stop the boats. And and I'll tell you a tradition I really love, war with France. This would be really superb. Wouldn't be if you can't control your coastline, then we will have to. This is in our national interest. This is absolutely fundamental. So the concept of borders, fundamental. The concept of sovereignty is the very basis. But within that, I would say, Graham, that we believe in democracy as the basis of that sovereignty. Within our existing first past the post system. This whole idea that Andy Burnham has of introducing PR and votes for 16-year-olds, no. That we have to reassert our ancient constitution, not the separation of powers, but the balance of interests within Parliament. And within that, we have to recognise the folly of deindustrialisation, postmodernism, free movement, and all of this, which has led to the erosion of our most fundamental traditions of liberty, of democracy, of sovereignty, and of the rule of law, rather than the rule of lawyers. So I wish to, I always say these concepts, I'm Jewish and I'm an academic, so there's no real limit to the amount I can talk. So I have to... So when I say in conclusion, don't take that seriously. Yeah. But what we see in our politics now is the absolute inability to be politically self-governing. The reluctance, the unbelievable reluctance across the ruling class to accept the unmistakable message from the people of our country, and above all the working class people in our country, that we believe in ourselves, that we trust ourselves, that, yeah, we can make mistakes, but the beauty of our system is that we can correct them. I always say the French, they're very good at revolution, but they're really rubbish at counter-revolution. They can't correct their mistakes. We have always been able to do this successively throughout history, and the means have been liberty and democracy, that we can have the argument without killing each other, and we can accept the verdict of the people to make those changes. The changes demanded by Brexit, which followed the Attlee settlement and the Thatcher settlement, they have not been done. When I say that the fundamental dividing line is between sovereigntists and globalists, our politics is yet to reflect the truth of that. And I've always been very, very, very willing and delighted to work with anybody across that divide to clarify what's at stake. And what's happening, you can see in our party, is that our party has been effectively colonized by progressive universalists. This is where they don't really care about the country, and they absolutely, you know, it's true in life. When you don't like someone, after a while, they tend to recognize it. Our attitude to the working class is like this. We really don't like the fact that they're the tribune of the ancient traditions of liberty and democracy, work and family. So what I would say to you in the end is I completely agree. All of that is the ancient constitution liberties, 8, 9 and 10. But if we want a strong national defence, I urge you to partner with us in getting a state-led national defence that can actually produce things. So what we have is a never-ending. We thought the Brexit referendum resolved the matter. We thought that the 2019 election resolved the matter. It didn't. The immigration policy, the lack of an industrial strategy, the dominion of the Treasury over all other departments meant that people like Michael Gove couldn't get local banks going, couldn't get the vocational training going. There needs to be a fundamental change. And that change is fundamentally a conservative one, where we honour our ancient institutions, we draw from our history to meet the challenge that we face. So I want to say that Brexit is by no means over. It's by no means done. The battle is still on. It will define our politics. It turned out one day after Andy Burnham stood, it was like the referendum was back. It was right back at the very centre of concerns. Now, accepting the result of the referendum is a very different thing to actively seeking the positive benefits of Brexit. This is what we have to do, a strong, strong industrial economy, a restoration of our armed forces, a restoration of trust. But I went to Trump's inauguration, and the thing that interested me most in that phrase, America, make America great again, was the word again. The people longed for a restoration of right order. I believe that's true in our country. The people are longing for stability, order, and a government that can reflect their ideas of right order. Civic peace, not having people with knives on the street trying to kill Jews. You know, they want an idea of being able to live in secure communities without threat of violence, the promise of good jobs, and they're willing to give to that. So also part of this story has to be welfare reform, artificial intelligence, and the way that we can free our resources to secure our liberty, our democracy, and our sovereignty. So really, thank you very much for the invitation today. Very good. The battle is still on, and I will always be a faithful foot soldier in that battle. Thank you.
Can I just... We've only got time for 2 very quick questions. One hand there, and, yeah, Kelvin. And a microphone there.
How do we persuade our Labour colleagues to recognise that the EU has been a disaster for manufacturing, and if we're going to rebuild a successful economy again, we have to get that back?
Okay, thank you. And the question there, very quickly.
I'd like to remind the conference of the catalytic role performed by our panel, and others within this conference, including Kelvin Hopkins, just spoke. We've just passed the 15th anniversary of a key date in the evolution of the situation that we now face, which was the foundation in 2011, on 15th of March, of a left-led cross-party campaign, the People's Pledge, which secured consensus, a groundswell across the country from all political parties. Baroness Jones of the Green Party, Caroline Lucas MP of the Green Party, Jim Sillars of the Scottish National Party, and so many others joined to run a democratically led campaign to secure democracy on the question of the EU. How can we recreate that democratic passion you tapped so well 15 years ago?
Thank you. Right, and I'm going to ask each of them, when they finally finish off, is to say who they think should be the next leader of the Labour Party. Right, can you start just with very briefly, because Bill Cash is due to come on and we all want to hear him.
Okay, yeah, and apologies, Bill, for running late and being late. Kelvin, when you've got a progressive takeover of our working class party, the only thing that can, as my parents used to say, learn them, the only way you can learn them is through reality. Now, I don't think, and I'm going to answer both questions, all three questions together, I don't think it's a given that Andy Burnham wins this by-election in Wigan. Not at all. That could be a very significant turning point, because he's not going to lose to the Greens, is he? He's going to lose to Reform. He's going to lose to a rebadged Brexit party. At some point, they're going to have a reckoning with who are their people. Mm-hmm. And there's a huge number of MPs who aren't MPs for affluent London suburbs, but actually quite poor post-industrial areas in the north. So although ideology is impervious to facts on the whole, they just see what they want to see, there's going to have to be a reckoning with the very existence of the party. I mean, I say to you, I'm I'm much too conservative a person to ever be a member of the Conservative Party. You know, because of what you did to working class people in the 80s. You just abandoned them and then go and work in McDonald's. There was no retraining, there was no love shown. It was a merciless abandonment of our very best people. And now look at where you are. Now look at where you are in the country. You're not heard, you're not listened to, it's difficult to participate in the national conversation. These are the results of what happens, and the same fate is for Labour. We have died in the hearts of our people, and I think this by-election in Wigan is going to demonstrate that. What I say, I don't know about the People's Pledge. Did you really get involved in that?
Yeah. And actually, what was good about that, and what we need to think also, is about getting those trade unions involved again, because the RMT still has a very strong leader who is He's anti.
Eddie, I saw Mick Lynch the other day. He was up for it. Yeah, so I think that's a crucial direction. Trade unions also overwhelmingly public sector, colonised by progressive idiots. We've got to get the private sector trade unions involved, get a big statue of Ernest Bevin, stick it right in the middle, and that sort of thing. So who do I want to be Labour leader? I've got no doubts about this. I want Shabana Mahmood to be the leader of the Labour Party, absolutely. And I don't think that that's a futile hope. We talked about it a bit yesterday, Graham, but let's just think hypothetically, which I hate to do. Let's say Andy Burnham loses in Wigan and loses to Reform. I think that might concentrate the minds of Labour Party members quite sternly. So this is a fluid situation. The idea that our movement has produced a religious Muslim woman from Birmingham of Pakistani origin who's a genuine patriot is actually a sign of great hope for us. So I've never hesitated about this. I support Shabana. If Shabana won't stand, I'm talking to people like Jonathan Hinder in the Blue Labour group, we did that yesterday, to say have the courage to put it forward, because if we don't have someone telling the truth in this leadership campaign, we will drift further and further into the EU progressive fantasy world, and then come the election, we will be obliterated.
Thank you. Grim.
Very quickly, of the three more or less named runners and riders at the moment, none of them appeal to me. Their policies, I don't think, would be popular in the country, and if they're popular in the Labour Party, that is a problem for the Labour Party. So I'm hoping Shabana or somebody else will come forward who will actually approach the real issues before this country in a way that they're being sidelined and body swerved at the present time. On the points Kelvin made and Maurice and John made in their speeches about sovereignty being dependent on wealth creation as well in the country, obviously I agree with that, and we need a serious industrial policy, but we also need, in a more fragile and risky world, we need to ensure that the supply to our industries, such as they are secure, yes. And they're not at the moment. So those are the two fundamentals in terms of the questions asked. And the third one, I think the debate as it did around the referendum in the EU, when Parliament and the major parties get so much out of kilter with public opinion, the campaigns naturally arise, and I think they will do again.
Thank you very much to both of you, and sorry, Bill, for keeping you running late, but I think we hopefully find that a very helpful session in terms of what's happening today in Parliament. Thank you.